Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, good morning to those of you from other geographies. Welcome to this 47th edition of ClarITea Chat. And today we have with us Sunil Rawlani, strategic advisor at Metamorphosis, ex-CIO of HDFC Life, and a veteran of Vodafone Hutch ANZ Grindlays, having worked across India, Australia, and Israel. Hi, Sunil. Welcome to ClarITea Chat.
Welcome. Thank you, Jagdish. It's a pleasure and also an honor and a privilege.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So before I start introducing Sunil, let me just give a shout to our audience. Thank you all for attending this. Thank you for those who are not attending this live for watching the recordings. Your comments, your encouragement, your likes, they come from all over the world and they keep us going. So a big thank you to all of you. Now, let me start by telling you a little bit about Sunil. Sunil was born in Bangalore, brought up in Mumbai, graduated from Kent State University, US. Now, he has been catching. The unique thing I found about him is like he has been catching those, sunrise industries like banking, telecom, insurance ahead of the curve, and he'll tell you how and why he has been doing that. After a successful corporate career across India, Australia, and Israel, he decided to become an entrepreneur and set up Metamorphosis about 11 years ago. So he'll be sharing his experiments in setting up virtual organizations as a CIO, driving customer-centric operations, even taking customer calls in a call center. His journey from analyst to project manager to CIO and now as an entrepreneur has many case studies, an amazing goldmine of transformational experiences, lots of inspiration and learnings. So thanks again, Sunil, for being with us. We will cover case studies. There's a very interesting case study coming your way on, he identified a great opportunity leveraging data, but didn't get the support and someone later on completely changed the industry with the same idea. Leveraging IT's holistic view in setting up the virtual enterprise, very importantly, leveraging partners effectively, and creating an on-demand enterprise. So some very interesting views and thoughts coming there. So his philosophy has been looking ahead of the curve for new opportunities. We'll also have, towards the end, a discussion about what are those three big changes that are coming, which are going to impact the IT roles. I wouldn't just call CIO roles, but overall IT roles. And you will see some of that, getting clarified as we go through the session. As always, we will end the chat with a rapid fire round and then his reverse question to me. So, as always, this seems quite heady. So let's start by making things lighter, get a little bit of fun and energy going. So, Sunil, tell everyone, what was your childhood dream?
I used to my native place was Bangalore. I lived in Bombay as a child, and we made several trips. Every year, we used to make one or two trips to Bangalore because with mom, and we took the train in those days, and I enjoyed my train journeys. Yeah. And if the Bombay Pune section was in the night, I would be very disappointed because I wanted to stay up and see the train going through the tunnels, and I would just be glued by the window. And I used to see this, you had that Deccan Queen engine in the front, and uh, I thought one day I want to drive one of these trains. Yeah. So ended up driving the engine of technology in the organizations I worked with. And as I was looking out the window, looking at the trains meandering through the ghats, maybe I learned to look ahead of the curve there as well. Who knows where you get these?
Awesome, awesome.
So a lot of my life is about just seizing opportunities rather than planning ahead, and that's how it's ahead because you just saw it and you went for it instead of waiting for someone else to try it or just
Awesome.
taking a beaten path. You saw a path and you just took it. Okay, you didn't do it by design. You just saw a light and you saw, okay, there's a pot of gold at the end of this. Let me just go, and you just
That's
make it
awesome.
happen.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. No,
So, in fact, something I didn't tell you is I was a college dropout, right? Meandering my time, and dad said you can't waste your time. So he plunked me in an accounts department of a company in 1981, which went on to become the first small scale industry company in India to buy a computer. But that's how I got into what you call IT today. It was called computers back then, right? So I was doing well. Dad said you should pursue it. I had lost a seat in engineering by 1%, by 6 marks. So he said go to the US. I went to the US before anybody knew. Very easily I got there. I got a degree in applied math, computer science. I got my degree in undergrad degree in mathematics, which is a computer science specialty, which is what it was in those days. And then I also applied for an MBA and an MTech, and I got into both. And the MTech was offering X money, and the MBA was offering less than half of that. I took the MBA for less than half in my assistantship, struggled, but chose to, I think that is when I realized that ultimately it was not about the technology itself, but about the business purpose that it actually serves, right? And which is where it has served me in my career. The MBA has given me a far more the possibility to taking a holistic view of the businesses.
sure, sure. So, but I mean, this engine, becoming an engine driver is like, I'm like thinking, oh my God, that would have been a completely different alternate future.
Well, as a
Because,
child, you see a profession that you understand. Now, somebody wants to be a fireman, you know, things like that.
yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely.
But
Okay,
don't
so,
in IT we do enough fighting fires, don't we?
yep, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we drive the engine of technology, we fight the fires. Yeah, so it's a all-in-one role as a CIO. So before I go forward and ask some more structured questions to Sunil, um, I just wanted to share that our LinkedIn analytics says that we have CXOs, founders, IT managers, and technology industry folks in our audience, all coming here with a common agenda: how to succeed with technology-enabled transformations. To learn why technology is always necessary but not sufficient, and the gap between necessary and sufficient, that's what ClarITea Chat is all about. So let us see who all we have here. May I request our audience to share your name and where you're joining from in the comment box of LinkedIn or YouTube? It comes to us. And well, let us see who all are already here. So right as the video was playing, we had Abhishek Billari shouting out, "Hey, I know you ask that question every time, so I'm from Airchain Bangalore." And we have Ashish Kumar. Thanks, Ashish, for joining us again and again. We have Senthil. Hi, Senthil from Bangalore. Then We have Vijay Sethi. Thank you, Vijay sir. My first guest and always attends ClarITea Chats. That's a very flattering.
Hi, Vijay.
Then we have Jennifer Kumar from USA. That's awesome. This must be early morning for you, and so thanks for getting up early on a Saturday morning to attend this. That's really flattering, Jennifer. We have Seshu from Hyderabad. We have Sunil Punjabi. Hi, Sunil. And we have Dattatray from Oman. So again, he has been a regular audience here. Well, let me start my my questions to Sunil. So Sunil, yes, you talked about your childhood, being college dropout, going to US, and all of that. Let's quickly go through your a quick career map. If you can talk about like the company that you worked with, and maybe one one big insight or experience from that company.
I came back to India in 1988, and the IT industry had kind of taken off over here, so to say. But Bangalore was still kind of not a destination on the world map, right? It was not known outside India, not really in the IT industry. And I was looking for jobs in banking, so I went to ANZ, and they were setting up an offshore quantitative development center in Bangalore. They asked me to move there, and I'd just come back after 5 years, so didn't want to leave Mumbai. Went and joined Philips. I was impressed with Philips because of the IT setup that they had in Eindhoven, right? However, after I joined this company, I realized that it was not a very progressive organization uh, in India from and that kind of standpoint. And 14 months later, I was in ANZ IT in Bangalore, part of the whole first lot of people that were working to put Bangalore on the world map. So I think that was a transformation point for me in understanding and actually creating, I would say, the whole IT back office of the planet is really what we were doing back then, right? And I'm really happy that I was part of the first few set of thousand people that were actually there doing that. And we were supporting countries from Australia, which is where the sun rises, and all the way to Africa, where the sun sets while we are here. So we had to set up a follow the sun kind of support system. You may call it two shifts, three shifts, whatever you want, but we called it follow the sun. I think the IT industry still uses that
Yeah.
terminology. And we never had internet. We did not have mobile phones. We were supporting live banking in these various countries in UK, in Africa's, in Australia. So just try to think if your end of day doesn't go through in the bank, how are you going to support it without having what technologies of remote access and things like that you have today. We used to work with telex machines back then, and phones. That's it. So human communication was a very big component of what you did, right? Because you could not take control of that computer there. Uh, so that was an opportunity that I saw, right? That IT is going big, right? And I decided to leave home in Mumbai and move to Bangalore because I could see that ecosystem evolving, banking IT, that this is going to be transformational. And I worked in Australia as in the Africa first, setting up an offshore support in Africa, and then moved as part of the AS 400 group to Australia, to Melbourne. And while I was in Melbourne for 2 years, I made friends in Telstra and Optus. And we never had cellular in India back then, but you got to learn what is cellular telephony, mobile telephony. And when I was visiting India, I realized that, cellular is launching in India. And I walked into Hutchison Max Telecom just to explore. And 2 weeks later, I joined that company. Yeah, cut a long story short, I just quit Australia, quit everything, quit going there, and just took a leap back in Mumbai, sitting in Stanrose Mills, watching a chimney with, the Stanrose Mills was still live then, just spewing black smoke out of it, because this was their first makeshift office. So this is how on the ground in a temporary office we set up the company that is today Vodafone India. We, right? So I'm going back to 1995, and I was in the company 3 nights, didn't go home. September 27, 95, it actually launched. And we launched without the billing systems live, without many systems live. That's how we do things. But it never was that we didn't send a bill out and we did not collect revenue for a single call. We did it, right? We did what we could, and but we still got that done. Uh, so that was an opportunity, going through the whole kind of thing is there was Vodafone, and while I was Vodafone, there was a lot of change has been happening. Hutchison went and tied up with Orange of UK. So it branded Orange, and Orange was setting up operations in Israel. And that was the first GSM being launched in Israel. So what Orange was doing is trying to bring in experts from different parts of the world to launch their operation there. So I got picked up to set up the IT for Orange Israel. And again, that was an opportunity I could not refuse going to, the people argue whether Israel is Europe or Asia, which country it is. It doesn't matter. It's a different geography. It's a progressive society. And in terms of IT, we have a lot to learn and catch up even till today from them, from that society. So that was an opportunity I got to actually go and set up an IT department in Israel. Bill Gates had a good book, Business at the Speed of Thought, which I used later in life, but those guys are really, really progressive and fast. Okay. And again, how business changes. Before I could finish my stint there, the Orange partnership ended between Hutchison and Orange, and I had to leave Israel. When I came back, there was no Orange in India. It was Hutch. So I left the company. It was Orange, came back to Hutch. I had joined Hutchison Max Telecom. It was Max Touch. So the company already went through 3 avatars. And now I'd learned mobile telephony, and I could see that the next big thing that would happen was payments. I mean, so when MasterCard offered me a role, I knew mobile payments had to be the big thing. And I joined MasterCard. And so this was 2000, right? It was about, I think, a whole 10 years or what, 15, 16 years before Paytm actually happened. Right. So that was the vision kind of I was seeing back then. And so I learned payments a little bit, but after having worked as a CIO in user organizations, I found that in MasterCard, I really was not playing any kind of role where I was owning kind of things. I was just like somebody who's attending to issues or operations in network. And at that time, I had my eyes, ever since I came from the US, you learn about banking and insurance being big in IT. I had my eyes on insurance in India, but insurance in India was taking a long time to set up with the R1, R2 licensing process. And so while I was at MasterCard, HDFC Life Insurance got licensed, reached out to me, and needless to say, it was not much to think to leave a place where nothing was, but I could see some inertia in terms of what I was doing, because I didn't want to only set up networks for card payments. I wanted to do more than that. So I joined HDFC Life, and HDFC Life was whole 10 years. And I would say this was a business role more than an IT role. And something I like to leave people with is IT is as much a business function as any other business function. In fact, more so today than it ever was before. So
Yep,
that
yep.
was it. And so HDFC Life was the end of the corporate part of it. And then I've been, trying to be a digital advisor, because I saw digital transformation as something that was big 11 years ago, and walked out into the world. And still people were not understanding digital transformation. So somehow, things take time for the world to see. So one of the challenges you have is to be able to help people see ahead of the curve along with you. It's not just you looking at something ahead, it's you being able to make the other see ahead as well. Be able to show them the ability to carry other people, be able to show them through facts. And sometimes it's not facts, because if you look at Steve Jobs and his vision for Apple, he had no research to back anything up. It was just his view and his ambition. He said, I'm going to take the customer here.
No, you're right. And in fact, I think the simple thing is, if you don't understand or adopt to transformation, then you get disrupted. So disruption is when you fail to understand transformation. So, Sunil, thanks for giving that map. And what we see is that, like, you have been picking the industry. Like, so you said, I want to work in telecom. I want to work in insurance. Then, I want to, like, take up digital transformation 10 years before it became, the buzzword. So you picked up, these sunrise industries ahead of their time. What was the motivation?
Well, the one fact I must add is it's if you see somebody's CV today, you will see people changing jobs. Even though I've gone around these industries, I've spent 16 years with just three companies.
Yep, yep, absolutely.
Despite picking up industry, so it's not like I went around changing it by design or went and picking it up. You were there somewhere, you spotted an opportunity, and you had the insight to see that yes, this is something that's going to trend, right? And so therefore you just somewhere you have to throw in the towel, take a leap of faith and go after it. And unlike a marriage, you can undo these things, right? It's not that
Yeah,
difficult.
no, absolutely. And I think the one element which you didn't mention, which I should say, is courage. Because these sunrise industries, when they come in, these are like startups, very small operations, as you said.
Again, what Steve Jobs said: stay hungry, stay foolish. That's what he
Absolutely,
said, right? Yeah. So either I was courageous or I was a bloody idiot.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the interesting question, which I'm sure everyone has on their
And I
minds
did the
right
I did all this way before Steve Jobs actually said that. So
now. Yeah, the principles remain the same. So, Sunil, the question on everyone's mind right now is like, what's the next sunrise industry you are after? Why? How?
no, I don't know if it's a sunrise industry, and kind of you're taking me to the desert portion here, but let me kind of step back a little bit, right? Because I always like to answer something from a holistic perspective, that a specific perspective. So where am I in life today, right? I completed 50 years a decade ago. Yeah, 10 years ago. I'm 60 now. So I was 50 a decade ago, and I chose to move or walk out of corporate life for personal reasons. And I assumed at that time that I have three productive decades left: 50 to 60, 60 to 70, and 70 to 80 as productive decades. Ceteris paribus. I mean, yeah, unless a truck runs over me, my plane crashes, whatever. Now, one third of that is already gone, right? Two-thirds is left. And I'm in my league. I'm quite fit. I've run 14 half marathons. That's how I've stayed fit. And running the marathon itself has a lessons of its own. Like when you do your work, you run the 100 meters when you have to, and then you run the marathon when you have to.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
So I've got health with me. I mean, and I don't really have a map for the remaining 2 decades, right? So if somebody wants to drop their ideas and tell me, what their map is for life for the remaining of it, what is the balance between a life of flow and a life of purpose, right? So I mean, some of the things I pursue spirituality, and obviously I travel. I catch up with friends a lot nowadays, and I really catch up with friends because you never did that in your job as much. And I urge people, when you spend your time with your family and your friends, switch off your jobs, okay, not just your phone. Switch off your identities, and you meet people. Just be you. Don't be the CIO or a father or some other role that you have. Just be yourself. So I mean, I'm looking at some, goals that I could serve either to an NGO, or could I be a climate evangelist? Uh, I mean, I've spent a lot of time. I've spent some time recently looking at environmental sustainability, carbon financing, blended financing, carbon sequestration, and got a chance to be part of a project that's putting together a platform for farming as a service. So that's an area I'm kind of exploring. It's not something that comes to me from a background of farming and science, but it's technology that's being utilized, and ultimately the way you utilize technology in any area. For example, you're going to bring in cloud to store data. You're going to do analytics. So the NGO I'm working for is a child NGO, for example. And we are talking about using predictive analytics to prevent child marriages. Yeah,
Awesome, awesome.
it's a simple thing, but what you're going to do is just gather demographic data, be able to intervene little proactively, and go and do something like that.
Yeah.
So
No, I think,
it's new things as such.
yeah. No, so Sunil, I mean, really interesting. In fact, um, right now in Pune, where I'm sitting, we are having 40-degree plus temperatures, which are like, I haven't heard of it. In fact, we were talking that, 12 years back when we were in Pune, we didn't even have air conditioners. And the whole India is going through a heat wave. And I think that puts this whole climate change, environment, sustainability, it's in the central focus. I think that agenda is in the boardrooms everywhere today. So yes, I would take that as a sunrise industry, from a technology intervention point of view, and how can we bring technology to like reduce emissions, be more efficient, etc., etc., etc. And of course, farming again. I was reading somewhere that in next 27 years or something, we're going to run out of food, and I think farming technology coming into farming and increasing our yields, or just feeding people can be another big agenda. So, Sunil, let's get on to the more interesting stuff now. You told me that the telecom organization you work for lost the plot by not trusting your analysis. So, tell us your experience of identifying opportunity, leveraging data, and what happened. I mean, that's an interesting case study in my view of not trusting data.
Well, everybody uses data. We talk about information-driven enterprises today. But the two companies I worked with, one is Telecom, which completely relies on data, and you're producing data, from the network, from call data records and call connections and logs. From the time you place a phone call till the time it actually is picked up, there are at least 30 records produced. And telecom companies needs to analyze these kind of records to improve your throughput, optimization, things like that. And the other part is that you actually produce data to study usage and trends and what is the talk time, who talks to whom, what are the different segments of customers, how are they using it geographically. So telecom is an industry that uses that. The other industry that I worked with, at life insurance, does that whole product pricing based on probability and statistics, right? And probability and statistics, I cannot do any statistics unless I have data. So
Absolutely.
I need mortality data, I need demographic data, how many people smoke, what is the age of average health of a smoker over time. And India, unfortunately, has been a very data poor country, actually. You know, even today, you have more SIM cards than people. So the telecom companies, if you ask them how many exactly number of subscribers you have, they don't know. They don't know how many SIM cards are live. They don't know how many people are there. They don't know how many SIM cards are the same person. Our jugaad actually gives us this fallout that we don't actually know much about our customers. So and while we do KYC and things like that, there is a long way to really go and making that a smooth, frictionless, to use an industry term, process. So in Vodafone, I brought my knowledge of economics, right? We were the first company to put in a data warehouse, the SaaS data warehouse in India. And this was brought in actually for fraud management and for doing analytics. But what I did is I developed an economic optimization quantity model. So this was 97. You know what the cellular penetration in India was. At that time, landline growth was actually still higher than cellular growth. Mind you, there was a landline growth in place when cellular came in. And at some point, it actually needs to become, it overtook and completely killed landline model. But this is before that happened. So I did the economic optimization model, looked at the barriers to entry. Like, for example, the handset was the barrier to entry. We had handsets costing 40 to 50, 60,000 rupees that a whole segment of population could not afford. And then the talk time, 1680, 840, 480. I did that whole penetration model, and it threw up a talk time of 2 rupees a minute. And the business said, business could not see it. Today you talk about a subscription model, but all they wanted to do was market skimming. So the tradition was market skimming: sell at the highest price, then sell at the next highest price, then sell at the next highest price. Who can afford? But the market optimization model actually says go and sell as much as you can. And so this was something that was not a mandate given to me. It was not a project that I had actually done as part of somebody asking. It was something that I took a business view. I took the responsibility. I took it to the people from Hong Kong. I showed it to them. But like I was saying, माई बाप होना चाहिए किसी भी प्रोजेक्ट के लिए. माई बाप नहीं है तो वो कहीं नहीं जाता है. So there was no owner for this. There was nobody who asked for it. It was something that I voluntarily did. And I talked about going to Israel. I went to Israel and I came back to India, and Reliance Telecom had launched at exactly 2 rupees a minute. So I got
Wow.
that right. But HDFC Life, obviously, we did a lot of work with analytics and data, and we were able to put all those models in place to come up with the actuarial pricing based on the amount of data that was actually available with what is available in the country, with the limitations that I said that
Yep.
exist.
Yep. So, sir, let's move to your HDFC Life experiences, and tell us about that interesting story of how the whole thing was getting set up, and how you intervened, came up with the technology model, and set up and evangelize this whole concept of virtual organization. That's a very interesting case study that comes from your experience.
So when I joined HDFC Life, the companies were, I think, on the cusp of changing to what we today call digital, right? Because the word digital still didn't exist in 2000, right? And business transformation itself was also a relatively new concept. And so when I joined HDFC Life, they were setting up a traditional organization with branches, physical branches, right, all over the country. So huge branches having people for customer service, sales. In life insurance, you have medical department, you have doctors, you have actuarial, which is the staff that does its actuarial processing. And therefore it becomes and therefore you have to, and then you will have your own HR. So if I'm setting up an office in Chennai with all these departments, obviously I need to recruit in Chennai, so you'll have a small HR department there as well. So they had this blueprint for creating large branches. And when I walked in here and looking at my background, I said, I need to have a central processing department here. I don't need to do policy processing at point of sale. At point of sale, I only need to do sale. I don't need to do servicing at point of sale. I don't need to do medical at point of sale. I don't need to do conversion at point of sale. I don't need to do actuarial at point of sale. So I circulated the book of Bill Gates that made us move towards a virtual organization. And then, needless to say, I had to prove the concept. How will you do it? You have to bring a network in. So will I bring my own network? And the other thing is, in those days, companies were setting up their own networks, but shared networks also were available. So I decided to take a step to use a shared network, which is much faster go to market, because I don't have to set up my own point-to-point network. I don't have to manage it. The costs are lower. And so you have to show that this is secured. You have to, naturally convince management through fact and reason why you are doing what you're doing, and explain that to them. And that is something that was, I think, a big bottleneck that I had, and I was able to move past it. So we set up a central processing office in Mumbai, and the branch size was actually cut by more than half. Not only the branch size was cut by half, it obviously brought that cost down. It increased the speed to market. So we grew at a 148% CAGR in the first 3 years because of this shift in business model, complete shift in business model. The company was able to grow much faster.
Awesome. Yeah, because you don't require the number of people to grow, right? Generally, your growth is tied down somewhere to the availability of resources, and here you just disaggregated the processes and
what I brought in was a shift. I said I brought in technology to solve a business problem. I mean, nobody in the business asked for it.
Yeah.
All the company will go and do and digitize and run your back office. So I brought that. The other thing I brought is paperless. We used to talk about paperless offices back then, right? That's how the word then was paperless. And then you had workflow. So we brought in digitization where we said that everything will be scanned at point of presence and uploaded over the network. And everything is done electronically. We put in, I think, insurance industry's first digitized workflow and content management solution, which got awarded in the US incidentally. And Forrester picked it up as perhaps the most sophisticated digitized workflow on the planet, because even the US companies had not gone that far with it. So we completely digitized it. Imagine, erstwhile companies are working with paper files, and an application from a customer is 60 pages, and you have digitized everything, and it is available with everybody across the country digitally. Once a customer's paper is digitized, you don't need to take it out again. It can go into remote storage. So
Absolutely, absolutely.
it's a detailed conversation, but imagine the impact that it brings on the company in terms of speed of processing, in terms of costs.
Yeah. So let me play back some of the learnings here, Sunil. Right. So see, the first thing is that, like, you talked about various processes, right? So each of the processes being in a sort of like, cube, which is the branch. And then you said, hey, it need not be looked at from a branch point of view, but look at it from an enterprise process point of view, and take out all the processes which can be done centrally, bring them to the center, and therefore, like, you create some sort of a hub and spoke, right? So the hubs running the
Yeah.
enterprise processes which can be done remotely, and then, the spokes running the customer facing processes. I think it's a important lesson for everyone who's listening to this, is that, take a process oriented view, and digital transformation is first about creating in your mind what are the processes that you need to change in terms of a traditional way of working. And I think the other thing that I pick up is that, it's not very easy to change mindsets. I think it took you quite some time to, like, convince everyone that this will work. I mean, and that's a necessary part of transformation, that you need to first, sort of shape or influence people's minds in terms of seeing the possibilities before you start executing. And if you try to do it the other way around, it may not always work, isn't it, sir?
It's I will borrow from ClarITea Chat here. You need two things. The CIO needs two things to work with the business. He needs clarity and he needs conviction.
Yep,
Clarity is when you know exactly what is happening in the business, right? You
absolutely.
need to understand the business as much as the business guy understands the business. And in my case, sometimes I understood the business more than the business guy understood the business. Is what
Ditto.
it's that's the compliment I got from my boss, right? That I understood because they would ask. I mean, technology can be a tail wagging the dog. So I had business people. They will see technology somewhere and they'll come back and ask for it, and I would be the guy and say, I would be the guy to say you don't need this. So it was not about propagating technology. It was about justifying technology. I had as many technology cases I shot down as I propagated, or in fact, I must have shot down more than I propagated, saying you don't need this. This is just fad. You don't get real value out of this. So you need that clarity. You need as much clarity as the business owner has, or more. And then when the people see that you have conviction, that you have seen the analysis, you are confident, you are willing to take that leap of faith. We talk about trust. I mean, for example, I like to call myself a trusted advisor today, but trust building is very important, right?
Yeah,
And you build that slowly, with steps, doing small things, going to bigger things, talking to people, giving them the comfort, being with them, sitting them with them. When we digitized underwriting, underwriters came from LIC. They're not used to working with digital systems. I would go sit in the offices with them, sleeves rolled up, and actually sit and work with them at their desks and show them what is different from what they are doing. And they became the biggest proponents. They wanted it more than I wanted it eventually. So people
yeah,
need to see what's in it for them. What's in it for me? The CIO, the CEO needs to see what's in it for me. The COO needs to see what's in it for me. The marketing guy needs to see what's in it for me. Everyone needs to see what's in it for me. That's the
yeah,
right
absolutely.
thing.
So I think last few minutes has been, like, almost like my mirror talking to me, actually, Sunil bhai. So, you know, it was. I mean, I can actually say that everything that you said, like, has been my philosophy. That you got to know business better than yours. In fact, most of the business discussions I had with the leaders were not about technology, was about business processes. Okay. Was about this is how it happens today. Okay. So what do you want to transform it to? Well, they will say, okay, this is my way. And I'll say, okay, have you looked at this alternative? Have you looked at this alternative? What if we bring in this technology? What if we, let's say, try to do this out of call center? And, those discussions and what you talked about trust, I think the biggest generator of trust is when they know that you know them, right? And I think the third one, I've got a simpler word for that, which is a Guju word, which I always use, is Parosu. What is in it for me? And
Yeah.
everyone who the technology is touching, as long as they are clear or you are able to clarify to them that what's in it for them, they will support you. They will be on your side rather than you trying to manage the change with them. So awesome, Sunil bhai, you really resonated with me definitely. Now, I think somewhere, a combination of technology and the ecosystem that's available, uh, you sort of brought it all together to create this concept of an on-demand enterprise. Let's tell us a little bit more about in the context of the current the way the technology is moving today. Things moving towards cloud and all that stuff. How does the current technology landscape enable it? It's a crude question. Why cloud? Tell us
Right
your
now,
experience, ground learnings.
I don't know. See, IT industry is good at creating buzzwords, and also, another thing is हम IT में अपना अपने अपने ही पाँव पे कुल्हाड़ी खुद मारते हैं, right? I mean, the
Absolutely.
IT industry created the cloud, and we have got artists. Many of us are no longer required to run our own data centers as a result of this, and our IT departments are now probably smaller, right? But what you got to see is, are you doing the right thing, right? And in fact, one of the things I need to leave people with is there is no right or wrong ever. Okay, you got to do what is appropriate at that point in time. Only time tells you if something is right or wrong. So when we had our own, so we set up our own central processing center, right? It was in our own data center, and I realized that if I have to have a high availability data center, if you have to have tier 5 and things like that, am I going to have my own petrol tanks at the bottom? Am I going to have my own generators? Am I going to have a secondary server here that takes over the failover? How do I do load balancing on my own, virtualization? And I quickly realized that this is something I could outsource. My job is not to run a data center. My job is to transform the organization. Running a data center is not something that is supposed to be a skill that I'm supposed to build. Why don't I give it to somebody who knows how to run a data center? And therefore, we made a case to, source our data center from a data center service provider. We went to SIFI at the time, and we moved it. Uh, uh, so what we did actually, first we did two things. So we also we said that 9/11 happened back then, right? If you remember, 9/11 was World Trade Center going down. 9/11 gave me a business case to set up a disaster recovery site, which is something that I wanted. I wanted business resiliency. 9/11 happened, I got what I wanted. Okay, as soon as 9/11 happened, everyone signed where I wanted to sign. We set up a secondary data center outsourced in SIFI in Tidal Park. So what was this? I had to explain to them. There's just a cage. Inside the cage, everything is mine, right? Nobody else has anything inside the cage. And then we took our primary data center in Mumbai and we outsourced that as well. So I didn't have to worry about, uptime and resiliency and things like that. I can focus on the business side of things and not on the infrastructure side of things. Now, I could have been a guy who could have said, no, I want a CTO and I want my whole big team that's going to run my own data center. I mean, I took a choice. That is not where I get the edge in running IT. And if you look at it, this is the foundation for the cloud. What has the cloud done? The cloud has given you exactly all these things and taken it to a far higher level of on-demand availability. And we were, in fact, asking for on-demand availability back then, but we didn't have that level of on-demand availability service providers that we have today, right? So that's what I was asking for back then. So you have to see what are the differentiators in your organization that you really need, and use the cloud to actually do things much faster. So with cloud gives you far more agility today to do things on demand, sir. If I take the insurance industry for example, my peak load comes in March and April. 4 weeks of the last 2 weeks of March, first 2 weeks of April, I need servers running at 10 times what they run in the remaining 42 weeks of the year, 50 weeks of the year, right? Uh, 48. So am I going to size it for that for the whole year? I can't possibly do that. So this is where on-demand availability allows you to do something like that. As an example.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, that's the that's the I would say, um, if I have to put it a little differently, I would say that like every business requires flexibility, both in terms of resources and resources, capacity, etc. And I think they don't have that flexibility in many other areas, like for example employee headcount, or for example let's say machines. But IT is one area where the that facility is there, that you can flex it based on your business. So why wouldn't you enable your business with that kind of on demand availability? So I mean, I had some stories of my own, but in the interest of time, I will move on, Sunil bhai. Um, so, one of the things when I was talking to you, I realized that, the amount of work that you have done, the capacity for it cannot come from, your own internal team alone. So talk to our audience about what you yourself call as a boundaryless ecosystem with partners. I mean, what are some of those things that you have to do to really leverage your partner ecosystem well?
Well, if I'm going to outsource my secondary data center, then there's another set of people running that data center. If I'm going to outsource my primary data center, someone else is running that. If I'm using policy admin system that comes from a different company like a DXC or whatever you've got, then you have CRMs which come from Siebel or whatever. Then you have accounting and other systems that come from SAP. Can you see automatically you have different service providers that are working for you? They are the ones that maintain this for you. What you become is like a conductor, right? You're a conductor, you're orchestrating the orchestra, and each one of them is a player in that orchestra. Now they are actually serving various customers, they're not serving only you. So if I have managed services being run out of Mysore, for example, that runs my whole country's network, and if I have data center from somewhere else, and if I have security services coming out of Hyderabad, because that is another area, cybersecurity service provider came from Hyderabad. How do I need to orchestrate all this to serve the purpose of my customer, right? So we are talking about customer centricity. Let me weave customer centricity here as an example to show why you need a boundaryless ecosystem. Ultimately, whether it is Wipro, whether it is Sifi, whether it is Airtel's network, whether it is my security provider, they all serve the purpose of meeting the end requirement of the customer of HDFC Life, right? That customer is out here to buy an insurance product. Insurance is one of the oldest and noble professions here. It is not about just selling somebody something and giving them a security or a risk management thing. Insurance actually helps you plan for your financial needs for unforeseen events 2 decades, 3 decades down the road. So if you have not configured the correct solution for your customer, if you have not sold them the right product, you are leaving somebody high and dry for a later point in life. That is something that is the view that I took in IT as being able to serve. That this is what we do. And this is what I had to explain to every partner in Mysore when they sit in a knock or a sock in the back, right? that you're not just looking at one command control center here. What you are doing is you're enabling the frontline staff of HDFC Life to reach its customers and sell and service them so that they have in life what they need to meet their own obligations and commitments in life. So all your partners, all your service ecosystem need to align with that view to be able to deliver seamlessly to that experience. This is what it means to understand the customer, put the customer front, and build a customer around the whole organization. It's not just the people inside the organization, but everybody who's involved in touching the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me replay, like, my understanding or summarize my understanding. So you said three or four key things here. So one is orchestration. As a CIO or as an IT department, it's our job to orchestrate the ecosystem. And orchestration means that all these instruments have to play in harmony. I think that's the difference between a solo performance and an orchestra, right? So everyone does it in harmony. That conductor role is something that we have to play as to how to not have anyone singing on a different note. The second one you mentioned is like the customer centricity. I think that customer centricity, people sometimes tend to take a narrow view, and it is our job to first ourselves be focused on the customer, which is the eventual customer, not the business functions who are your customer. The third most important thing is to communicate this to communicate the larger purpose to our service providers, saying that you're not serving me, you're actually eventually allowing me to serve to the end customer. So make sure that that we are aligned on that part. And I think in IT we have to make all kinds of exceptions. There are all kinds of like things that go outside of the contract, but as long as that that North Star is clearly understood by everyone, I think people align to that. So that's been my experience also. So great, Sunil bhai. So I think we are at 8 minutes to finish. So what I'm going to do is right in the beginning, I ask people to tell us where they are from. So I'm just going to quickly run through some of our folks who responded after that. So we have Prashant from UAE, Pawan from Kolkata. He doesn't even bother to write Kolkata because he knows I'm going to say that he's from Kolkata. Thanks, Pawan, for joining. We have Manu from Dubai. Jennifer says Sunrise Industries. That's a new term. Thank you. And okay, so then we have a question from Senthil. So what we will do, Sunil bhai, is we'll take this as a rapid fire questions now. Maybe 30-40 seconds. Try to give a quick answer to those. So Senthil asked a question: what's your take on company culture across domains, and how you are able to adapt and influence to grow into your leadership positions? A short answer to that. What's your take on
every company has its own culture, and one is you pick it up to see what it is, and you also do your best to influence and create that whole culture yourself as a CXO, right? To define what that culture is. And one is obviously we play a role on how technology should be used in the organization. That is a role that the CIO has to take a responsibility for, and he has to execute on that role on how technology is going to be utilized. Okay, and that is, if you cannot do that, you cannot influence the other things. In that's how you ask, how do I influence this? If you're able to take that and you have got that ownership for that, then you can influence the use of technology in the organization.
Absolutely. I'll just give you my quick take on that, Sunil, by that. I call culture as a collective behaviors of people. And I think as technologists, we can influence the collective behaviors to be a lot more automation and tools driven, people using the technology tools effectively, whatever they have. A lot of work to be done with HR on that. And the second very important one, I think, where technology plays a big role is to create a data driven culture. So again, think about those things as to how we can be influencing that. And successful IT leaders do manage to influence these two. So Sunil bhai, another question for you. Sorry, you wanted to say something?
I think just because culture was a question, it would be incomplete not to talk about the cultural shifts that are taking place today. Okay, with what COVID has brought in. See, remote work was there 15, 20 years back. It is nothing new. But what COVID did is it has brought a twist on remote work, right? With all this work from anywhere, work from home, there's a huge shift. Already there was a skills gap, right? Industries want particular skills from IT, but we were just hiring people. Now, with work from anywhere, the whole culture has shifted to hiring only skills, not hiring people.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
absolutely.
the organizational culture is now going to change, right? So, depending on the industry you work with, and depending on how much it can actually source from different parts of the world globally without having to hire somebody, is the shift that you got to watch for. And as
Absolutely.
CIOs, CTOs, we have to see how we are part of that shift and play in that shift and enable organizations to evolve to becoming more virtual than they were before. Now, this is where the real virtual organization getting redefined. Okay.
I agree. Yeah. Another question for you. Setting up digital in 2000. In fact, I went through the same challenges that you had, Sunil, by in terms of like build versus buy and other stuff. So, I get a quick answer to were there any showstoppers or struggles? So, what was the biggest
Yeah,
struggle in?
sure. The biggest struggle was convincing boards that were very orthodox in their thinking to outsource, right? If I take, with due respect, companies that are legacy organizations are orthodox by nature, right?
Yeah,
Even clients that I did some sourcing for, last 10 years I've been doing some advisory in Thailand and things like that. And one of them in telecom service provider, and these it's a satellite based service provider, and the people are so much caught with their businesses. They've not realized the world has moved on from satellite to internet based on demand. You don't need satellite based transmission anymore. Satellites typically are used for internet connectivity, but you don't need to relay from a satellite anymore. Even today in everybody's house, I don't know if anybody has satellite TV in India other than the rural areas. Also, you're using
yeah,
cable, you're using the internet. So the
yeah,
biggest is the mindset change that you have to drive to people to move from the past to the new, and which is where that clarity and conviction I earlier talked about is what matters. Outsourcing a data center to CFE. How is my data safe in somebody else's data center? How is it safe in a different city altogether? How are you controlling, managing it? How
yeah,
your own production center is in a different somebody else's service provider. Data is going over a third person's network. Cyber security is being managed by another organization. How are you
I agree.
managing look at it, data privacy is today what you talk about. So all these challenges, these are the biggest challenges that I think that are there are smaller challenges obviously, but mindset change shifts, moving from analog to digital processing, working without paper when we digitized, sitting with them and walking them through it and giving them the comfort. Maro Su, what's in it for me? Just show people that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So, Sunil Bhai, there's another appreciation for you. Somebody replays it. There's no right or wrong. Only time tells whether it's right or wrong. Then we
Yeah.
have, thanks for that, Hardik. Then we have Bhupendra Pant joining us from Oman. Used to be the L&T and now with, yeah, now in Oman. So thanks, Mr. Pant, for joining us. Pawan has a question again. Please make it rapid fire in the interest of time, Sunil Bhai. We're just at the end of it, and I've got like a couple of more interesting sections. So, succession planning to run the
Yeah,
show.
succession planning. I see the question. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
If you don't want to steal the thunder, it's not a problem to do succession planning. It's when we think that we are indispensable, that is when succession planning becomes a problem. Make yourself indispensable everywhere in life, whether as a father, whether as a brother, whether as a son. That is how you got to think that I am indispensable. I'm dispensable. Sorry, not in. I am dispensable. If you think that I will make myself dispensable, succession planning is never a problem. By the way, your IT team will never be successful unless the people under you are built to be the leaders the same way as you are. Right?
absolutely.
It is only when your direct reports and the people under them become owners and become leaders that you become successful.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, one of the simple things that I used to do, Sunil Bhai, I always used to announce to my boss that, apart amongst all my direct reports, like, who's the guy I should be grooming to succeed me. And I remember when I went from CRM to heading CRM to becoming a CIO, I already had my successor identified, and I think it was one of the most seamless transitions. It's another thing that that guy, with his potential, is a CIO now.
I mean, I want to use this opportunity before we end the show. There are three changes taking place in the world, right? That I want to leave the audience with. In terms of tech, don't underestimate the impact of the cloud, right? No code development is going to completely take away 65% of app development is already no code. 60% of apps are today outside IT. So that those are two big changes that have come technologically that are going to impact us. Second is environmental change, right? Environmental change is that change is very rapid today. Okay, so you need to build you need adaptive IT before you need far more adaptive IT today. So don't chase perfection, right? Things are going to happen very quickly. You need to respond and build very quickly. Uh, and the third is that there's this whole cultural change that has happened because of work from anywhere and the skills based thing that I already talked about is going to drive. You are seeing the great resignation that's taking place in the US, and you are seeing that the tech shortage is already there in India as well. So this is somewhere that organizations you need to sit with your HR or your CEO and create that new organizational behavior and a new policy. So, okay, and I think IT should lead that. IT needs to lead that, and nobody else can lead it
Yeah, yeah,
because it's
absolutely.
a technology-fired change.
Yeah, that's right. I think the biggest disruption that's happening in the world is in the technology area, and if we as technology leaders don't lead the change, who else will?
So
Otherwise,
let us go and disrupt in our organizations before our organizations get disrupted.
absolutely, absolutely, bang on, bang on, bang on. So, Sunil bhai, before I go to, I think a lot of my rapid fires have been answered. So, here is an invitation to all of you listening to this chat. If you have any rapid fires, any curious, small little questions for Sunil bhai, ask them, like, the favorite book, favorite actor, etc., etc. So I'll leave that platform open to you. In between, in the meanwhile, I have two people, who are like completely new to the show. So I just wanted to call them out. So I have Madan from Navi Mumbai. I think it's your first time, right, Madan? And I have got Amit Upadhyay from Pune. Thanks, Amit, for your kind words. Okay, so guys, please ask only rapid fire question. I'm going to take only rapid fire, not descriptive ones, which can unleash Sunil Bhai to like go on and on. Okay, so yeah, now let me go to some of my rapid fires. Okay, so Sunil Bhai, you being a old telecom hand, what kind of mobile connection are you on, and why?
I have a simple Airtel prepaid connection. Why? I don't know. I
Why?
use I use
Why?
I use what I use what seems to work, and what's I mean. I have never moved out of Sasta Sundar Tikau mentality.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, that's great. That's great. Okay, so I have this rapid fire for you. This is like a simple maths question. Okay, so the business goes from 3,000 to 21,000 employees. Okay, IT department goes from 300 to how many and how?
It can go down. It doesn't need to increase. It can stay the same because what you're doing with technology is you're moving all of your management to technology. I mean, today, of course, you have
No,
robotic process automation, so you can have even better than what I did. But as my
this is
see,
a question from your experience. This is a question from your experience. So what happened exactly? How much did it go
only
from?
sales, only the sales workforce needs to increase in an organization. If you have deployed your technology right, your service workforce, your other departments will not increase. So, and the IT number actually can reduce because you're moving things using managed services. So we actually went from 300 to about 60
That's the right answer.
because
Okay.
because
And you
because
took
all
the
my
answer.
people that I had country, I just moved them. It's not that but to go back to the boundaryless ecosystem, there were still other people involved in doing it with a combination of people and technology, just not my staff. On
Absolutely.
demand.
Yeah, on demand. Yes, yes. So that was the right answer. So, Sunil bhai, another one. You shared something very late where I don't know the answer, frankly. But what is it about no physical possessions? Tell us about it.
Well, I think you were asking me about this book that I shared, right? It was a Bill Gates book that I had signed by somebody, and I had a whole library. And somewhere along the line, I've been trying to reduce. I've been following minimalism,
Oh,
spirituality, philosophy, stoicism, history. I follow Buddhist economics. So it's all about, you know, consuming as less as possible. And this is in sync with what I'm going to be doing along with when I'm in environmental sustainability and things like that, right? So if you look at Bhutan, where they have gross national happiness, not gross national product, they want to consume only as much as that you need to live and nothing more. And
yeah,
unless we bring that kind of conscious change, you cannot address climate change and things like that. So, all of us, we need to start embracing in our own ways. How can I do more with less? I mean, IT guys always talk about doing more with less, right? So, why can't you do more with less in life? So, what I have done is, for example, I have a laptop that has only cloud storage. I have only 256 MB solid state. I have no storage here. Everything is on the cloud. So why should I have all these books and things like that? I mean, I cannot contest with somebody the joy of holding a book in your hand and reading. But I chose in life to declutter. I chose in life to have as less physically and as possible. So
awesome.
it even comes down to clothes that you wear. You wear clothes that are using natural organic products, that are kind on the environment, that are easy to maintain, that use less detergent. This is how, if we have lost track of mindful living. I responded to a post on LinkedIn last night on climate change, where I have talked about these behavioral changes that we need to do if you have to bring global warming back down to where it is. You're sitting in a heat wave today, right? Delhi has what, highest temperature in 12 years, something in the news today.
Yeah,
Why are we impacted by these heat waves? Unless, so we have to start doing our bit at our individual level. It is not about expecting the government to do something or the US to stop consuming what it is consuming. Yes, that one country consumes one third of the world's resources, but we consume our own resources, right? If I leave my monitor on, if I leave my TV on, I use light mode instead of dark mode. Just start using dark mode. That makes a lot of difference to carbon
absolutely.
footprint.
Yep, yep. No,
So
I think
it's just conscious living. That's all. That I
yeah.
think every one of us should follow.
No, absolutely. And I think, we know that consumerism hasn't led us to more happiness. It has actually led us to a warmer planet. And I think it's time to go to minimalism. In fact, the moment I understood, Sunil bhai, that, how dark mode consumes less energy, my phone is in dark mode, my Outlook is in dark mode, which we use the most. Yeah, and um, I use my browser in dark mode, whatever I
For the
can.
last,
So
for the last 12 years, my presentations are white on black.
same with me. Bang on. My
I
presentations
would,
are white.
I would urge it to make an industry standard. Your presentation should be white and black. Don't print. If you're printing, there's an option to do black on white. Don't print them white on black, because then you will print black
Yeah,
pages.
more. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Same with me. It's just that mine is a little light gold on black instead of white on black,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
sometimes
Whatever.
can
Yeah.
be eye jarring. Okay, so that's very interesting perspective, Sunil bhai. And yeah, maybe just one follow-up question on that. You talked about clothes. So which are the two colors you wear?
Black and gray.
Awesome.
Mostly gray. I
Yeah.
like blue.
So,
I like blue as
yeah,
well. So.
yes. So Sunil bhai, thanks for that. I think it's been a great chat. Lots of good insights, lots of very different and very powerfully, I would say, spoken, insights to our audience. So I've been asking you the questions. The audience have been asking you the questions. So it's like, revenge time. So what's your question to me?
I don't have a question for you, but I was listening to Elon Musk last week, and he says, I am living on the edge of sanity. So, where is your edge of sanity?
My edge of sanity.
Yeah. What do you do to push yourself to the edge of sanity? What do you do to stop yourself from just not becoming insane?
I play golf. So,
You
when
like,
life gets insane, when life gets a little insane, it's actually, each one of us needs to have our pressure relief valves. So my pressure relief valve is, I have two pressure relief valves. One is reading, which I do before sleeping every day. I mean, that just gives me some nice sleep. And yeah, when I need that active thing, that I need to think through things, things look don't look to be the way I want them. Like, I just go and play a game of golf. It's very meditative game. If you don't fret about much, we just take it as it comes. Well, I mean, to all the golfers who are listening out there, golfers is like, they say that it's the most stressful way to relax. Because just because of the amount of fretting and hemming and hawing that people do. But I played a little differently. For me, a good shot or a bad shot is the same. It's just like, like I keep reflecting on it, and in the process, like, I get a lot of reflection time. So that's my way of, like, not crossing
see,
the edge.
what you're really saying, Jagdish, is when you get upset when you have an expectation and the expectation is not met, right?
Absolutely.
So, if just saying don't have expectations is not realistic, because you cannot not have expectations. But what you have to do is you try to try three things in life, right? If there's a problem, try and solve the problem. If you can't solve the problem, try and eliminate the problem. You can't
Correct.
eliminate the problem. You can't solve the problem. You accept the problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
When
Absolutely.
there's no way out, go deeper within.
Absolutely. I mean, you said it, and I think what a way to end the chat, Sunil bhai. That's, I think, a very powerful statement. When you can't go outside, go inside. That's exactly like golf is my way of going inside and thinking it through. So, on that note, Sunil bhai, thanks so much for being here, and some really powerful answers to simple questions. Thank you, all our audience, for attending and engaging. And thank you, all of you who are watching the recording, in your leisure time over the weekend. So, to everyone, please enjoy your family time. Yes, we are going through a heat wave in India. Let's do our bit, as Sunil bhai said, to, like, to lessen the impact, and it's up to each one of us to do that. On that note, thank you, Sunil, for joining me on ClarITea Chat today. We will be back on next Saturday, that is 7th May, with another senior leader narrating some really interesting life stories. Till then, bye bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Jagdish. Thank you, ClarITea.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.